Scandinavia, a land of untouched nature, shimmering water and beautiful architecture. And in the cold depths of winter, we set off on a thrilling road trip that will take us from the charming canals of Copenhagen in Denmark to the epic fjords of Oslo in Norway. So join us as we embark on this unforgettable journey through the heart of Scandinavia. We began our adventure in the neighbourhood of Amalienborg, a vibrant area just to the south of Copenhagen city centre, separated by some beautiful waterways glittering in the low morning sun, including Copenhagen's extremely large port. Because if you didn't know, up until the 12th century, Copenhagen was just a small fishing village, which is why its port is so impressive today. And this just became even more obvious as we began to walk along it. Despite being one of the older parts of the city dating back to the 17th century, Nyhavn ironically translates to New Harbour in English. This palace is the official residence of the Danish royal family. At the head of this palace is a church that is very hard to miss. It was inspired by the Renaissance architecture of Italy, and it's actually the largest dome in Scandinavia today. And here we arrive at the glittering waterways that are home to the Little Mermaid herself. Here it is, Ellie.
We've seen it now. Well, we haven't seen it quite yet.
I think if you've been a fan of The Little Mermaid and just Anderson in general, I think it's quite interesting to see. And to be fair, it was a very nice walk to get here. There you have a lovely park next to it. The sun is out. You're just by the seashore, so It's not just about the statue, but it's also about the environment to get here.
From here we walk to one of the best preserved fortresses in Northern Europe that is now one of Copenhagen's many beautiful and peaceful green spaces. So the first thing I noticed when walking around these streets is just how peaceful and quiet everything is. I don't know if it's because it's quite literally 3 days before Christmas when we're filming this. Copenhagen is full of these green parks, but it's not only the parks that make Copenhagen such a green city. It's actually aiming to be the first CO2 neutral capital city, with many locals eating mostly organic food already, over half of them cycling along the 400 kilometers of bike lanes in the city as well. As the light faded, we visited one of Copenhagen's many bakeries and picked up what is essentially a massive cinnamon bun with a bit of a twist.
Well, it's very nice.
You can't go wrong with cinnamon, usually.
I love a cinnamon anyway, so yeah, this is very nice.
As we only had 48 hours in Copenhagen, even though we were exhausted from our long day so far, we did actually decide to head back out before the day was over. Tivoli Gardens are actually the second oldest theme park in the entire world. The oldest theme park also being in Denmark, by the way. It's around 180 years old and it's home to the oldest wooden roller coaster in the world. Our second morning greeted us with a thick layer of cloud and rain that covered the entire city. It truly looks like the opposite of yesterday. Let's go. We had planned to climb this tower, which is actually the tallest in Denmark, but the wet conditions had caused it to close, so instead we walked here. This is Christiana, a community that operates completely independently with their own laws, flag and way of life. It began in 1971 when a group of people broke into what was at the time an abandoned military base, and they began to turn it into their home. Around 1,000 people live here today, and it is a completely autonomous community. So a very unique place that you wouldn't think is pretty much in the center of a capital city. After discovering the other church spire was closed, we still wanted to get that panoramic view of Copenhagen. So we walked across the entire city, including Strøget, one of the world's longest pedestrianized shopping streets, home to, among many other shops, the Lego store, which obviously, how can you resist? You are in the home of Lego after all. What you got? Roasted hot dog.
So you must try the hot dogs in Copenhagen.
So yes, a classic staple, at least been looking forward to it for a long time. Go on.
I'm trying my best.
The Round Tower was built as an astronomical observatory in the 17th century. The tower is built with an equestrian staircase, which meant that a horse and carriage could transport books to and from the library, which is around halfway up the tower. At the top of this tower, we gained a perfect view of Copenhagen's skyline, whilst getting a little wet from the rain that had now come in. Copenhagen's long and impressive history is on display at every corner, from royal palaces that stand at the head of grand parks, its forward-thinking culture, and its many, many museums. With both me and Ellie working in creative industries ourselves, we also decided to check out the Design Museum, which showcases Denmark's forward-thinking attitude incredibly well, pushing the boundaries of design and helping us open our minds to new creative possibilities for our future. As this day came to an end, we decided to rest and recover for the night, as we had a very long journey ahead of us tomorrow into Sweden. The Øresund Bridge is 10 miles long and was built in 2000. It links Denmark to Malmo in Sweden, which we passed through on our journey to Sweden's second largest city, which is Gothenburg. Where are we, Ellie?
We are in Gothenburg now.
Yes, exciting. Now, our first day in Gothenburg was actually none other than Christmas Day itself, hence why everything was so quiet. So we decided to have a morning stroll through Gothenburg's most famous and largest park, home to actually a 3 zoo. We're currently in the city's most iconic park, which is actually home to some lovely wildlife. Although many things may be closed, we're making the most of Gothenburg today. It's such a peaceful day, there's kind of nobody around. Very atmospheric, as you could see.
We saw penguins on Christmas Day.
After exploring the park, we decided to get on one of the many trams that cross all over Gothenburg and head to a quite unique attraction known as the Universeum. This is a museum that essentially takes you through all the different climates, beginning in a polar zone and even heading into a tropical rainforest zone as well, with so many different animals to see and things to learn. It was an incredible way to spend Christmas Day. After this museum, we even strolled up to the main high street of Gothenburg and enjoyed some beautiful ramen at a really incredible restaurant. Look at this.
Yeah, look how big it is.
Well, I'll just get
Compare it to my face.
with a view. Which turned out to be our Christmas dinner. We did want to get Swedish meatballs, but the place that we had planned to get them was unfortunately closed on Christmas Day, but that did not stop us, as the next morning we would definitely get some Swedish meatballs. But first of all, Christmas Day wasn't over yet, as the light may have begun to fade at around 3 p.m. But we stayed around the high street to see just how beautiful Gothenburg is at night. All the buildings are adorned with lights and lit so beautifully. It's a really incredible place. In Gothenburg, fun facts, was actually the first time that I ever left the UK. That was almost 8 years ago now, but I still remember the bright lights very, very fondly, and I'm happy to say it lived up to every one of my expectations and even surpassed some of them. So the next morning we woke up bright and early because we had a very long journey ahead of us up to Norway. But first we needed to energize ourselves, and what better way to do that than with some classic Swedish meatballs.
Wow, look at that. Lovely. Let's see how it compares to Lidl. Very nice.
It was worth the wait, and especially enjoyable in this beautiful cafe that we went to. The journey from Gothenburg to Oslo was around 4.5 hours, and we passed some of Sweden's incredible landscapes along the way, seeing the hills become bigger and bigger as we headed further north and eventually crossed the border into Norway. It's actually around 9:30 in the morning now, and the sun is just coming up now. The light is starting to appear, but it will be gone again by just after 3 p.m. So we do need to try and get a move on, get out into the city and really see some of the beautiful things that it has to offer. Munch. Edvard Munch was a man haunted by anxiety and loss. His paintings often capturing the very essence of human experience, from love to grief to anxiety and dread, the latter of which never clearer than in his iconic work, The Scream, with a view over the Oslo fjords as the backdrop to this haunting painting. This museum expanded my knowledge of Munch's skill as an artist so much, revealing the true breadth of his works. The museum's not only deeply moving, but from the top floors, the building offers amazing views over the beautifully unique architecture of Oslo, including the Oslo Opera House. This stunning marble and glass structure is truly unique, especially in the thick fog this morning. On top of the Opera House, are you?
Yeah, we're walking.
Its sloping roof allows you to walk all the way to the top for yet more breathtaking panoramic views of the city and the fjords, tempting us off in the distance. And after seeing a ferry returning from one of the islands, we walked down to Oslo's docks to see if we could catch one. On the way, passing Akershus Fortress, a medieval castle dating back to the 13th century. Following that, Oslo's City Hall, most famously hosting the annual Nobel Peace Prize ceremony inside. And finally, the docks, where a ferry would take us to one of the smaller Oslo fjords, because we just couldn't wait. As we headed out into the bay, we got wonderful views of the city as the fog re-emerged.
There was so much to see outside.
The light is fading, it's around 3 p.m. I guess it's
very quiet.
Silent. So as you may expect, these islands do not have cars on them. It does almost feel a little bit like a deserted island if it wasn't for these pristine, colourful, brightly painted houses. We walked across almost the entire island in around 30 minutes. But almost as quickly as it had come this morning, the light began to fade again for the night. So as we're walking through here, we're just kind of imagining how amazing this would be in summer. The sun's out, long days, everything would be so lush and green.
It's kind of cool, isn't it?
Very strange.
Yeah.
I guess not that many people make it to this island, especially this time of year.
No, definitely not.
So now the fog has really come in and we're trying to catch the ferry. It's very spooky indeed in this forest. That's really good. Here it comes. The next morning brought us to a peninsula just to the west of Oslo city centre, where we can find some of the best museums in Oslo. So let's begin with the Fram Museum. This is the Fram, a legendary ship said to be the strongest wooden ship ever constructed. And it needed to be to withstand the crushing pressures of ice as it voyaged across not only the Arctic but the Antarctic too. This ship holds the record for sailing both the furthest north and the furthest south of any wooden ship. It took part in 3 multi-year polar expeditions between 1893 and 1912, and exploring its decks today, we learned so much about life on the ship in these treacherous conditions, including my favourite fact that there were actually over 120 dogs on board at certain points. And that would have made those long polar expeditions all worth it, I'm sure. Just next door, another museum shows off yet more marine exploration, but this time pretty much totally opposite. It shows the story of an expedition across the Pacific Ocean from South America to the Polynesian Islands in 1947. Many people presumed it to be impossible, but they were successful on this very raft, therefore proving the theory that South Americans could have voyaged across the Pacific Ocean and populated the Polynesian Islands. On our way to the final museum today, we stopped off at Hook, which is right on the tip of this peninsula. The sea is like glass right here. There is absolutely no wind today. It's almost an eerie silence because it's just no sound except for my feet on the sand, which feels just very strange in this freezing cold weather. The Norwegian people have a long history of resilience, living through sometimes harsh weather conditions, having a deep connection to nature and the environment around them, and the sea, which has shaped Norway's culture and economy. This museum showcases Norway's cultural history, showing how they lived across the ages. Around 1,000 years ago, Norwegians were skilled seafarers, traders, and warriors who explored and raided across Europe, establishing settlements in Iceland, Greenland, and even North America. This time was long ago, and not much evidence is remaining of it today, but this museum is home to a very rare piece of history. Built in the 12th century, this is one of the only 28 remaining stave churches in Norway, complete with intricate carvings, and although you couldn't enter inside, I did manage to have a peek through the iron gate, and by boosting some of the settings on my camera, did manage to get a unique look at the inside of this unique piece of history. Next morning we got out well before the sun rose and headed up to the frozen hills of the Nordmarka forest, high above Oslo. So it's early in the morning right now. It's around 8:30, which means the sun has only just come up, and we're actually in the hills around 400 meters above sea level to be exact. And here, as you can see behind me, there is a lot of, I don't even want to say snow, more like ice. It hasn't snowed for a while, but it's so cold up here that everything, the ground is frozen over, including this entire lake behind me, completely frozen. It's like a winter wonderland up here, as they say.
It's -3 degrees, but Google said because of the wind condition it feels like -9, which I can agree.
This is actually considered very mild for this time of year, and in fact in the next couple of days it's going down to around -10. So you can see what is arguably one of the world's most famous ski ramps behind me. On this hill sits this ski jump, which has hosted numerous prestigious ski jumping competitions, including the Winter Olympics in 1952 and several world championships. So I'm sure you can see why this is a hub for winter sports and outdoor activities, attracting enthusiasts from all over the world.
For the other one in line.
And back now into the heart of Oslo to explore some of its many museums. Beginning with the Oslo Reptile House, which may be small, but it's home to many unique animals, including even a black widow spider. Ibsen was a Norwegian playwright who lived and worked in Oslo. Inside his house is a museum about his life and work. So what is it?
From my understanding, they have these pastries called nut, which kind of means not. And they just have different fillings. This one is pistachio, but the traditional one is cinnamon. So it's basically a cinnamon bun.
Next up, the Natural History Museum, a massive building home to a full cast of Stan, one of the most famous and well-preserved T-Rex skeletons ever found. And finally, my favourite museum, which is the Historical Museum, with a wonderful display of Viking artifacts like jewellery, weapons, tools, all preserved exceptionally well. To think of the stories that these objects must have is mind-blowing, and the details still visible today are just stunning. I've never seen anything else quite like it. Now, as promised, it is the final day, and it was perfect because the sun had come out and it was time to head out into the Oslo fjords. So that is the sunrise behind us. Our first island stop is the closest to the city, being only 5 minutes away by ferry, and it's the largest of the Oslo fjords. The thing that's so lovely about these islands is that they're so close to the Oslo city centre. I think it's so rare that you can be in a big city and be just a 5-minute short ferry ride away from this. We walked around the coast of the island as the sun rose over the calm waters, seeing its woodland, its serene beaches and surrounding landscapes. I'm looking now out at the mountains over a little beach. It's completely peaceful, completely quiet. albeit a little cold and windy today. This island offers a fascinating blend of history and nature in the form of the remains of a monastery that dates back to the 12th century. We're free.
We can go into the warmth.
Into the warmth for 5 minutes.
I'm eating pizza, and it's the best thing I've ever had. It has crisps on it and taco meat, and it's just delightful.
From
Universeum. Very good place.
Just a stone's throw away lies yet another island, which is today a designated nature reserve. It provides a haven for seabirds and a peaceful escape from the city bustle. This is our third and final island on the coldest day yet. And this is the furthest away from Oslo, because this is Gressholmen. Both islands offer stunning views of the Oslo fjord and provide a glimpse into Norway's rich history and natural beauty. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, seeing our entire trip across Scandinavia. It really was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I would totally suggest that you consider, if you want to see some of these cities, that you see them in this way. They're surprisingly close to each other considering how vast Scandinavia is. The buses were extremely accessible and affordable as well, so I think it's just a really nice way to see not just these cities, but the landscapes surrounding them as well. So I really hope you did enjoy this video and found it useful. Please do consider subscribing to the channel if you did, and checking out even more content from not just Scandinavia, but all over Europe as well. So thank you so much for watching this one, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.